property sourcing in South Africa is very different to property sourcing in the UK and what they call property wholesaling in the United States of America. Now, in my time of doing property sourcing, yes, my time is actually come to an end of doing property sourcing. I have just retired within property sourcing, both teaching and actually doing this, well, officially as of April 2022, right? What I had found is that so many times when people engage me and they ask me, what about the buyer's list? What about the escrow accounts? What about this? What about that? And I'm like, ladies and gents, be careful of the content that you're listening to. Listen to the ideas of how people found the property. Listen to the ideas of how you can slice and dice the numbers. Look at videos where it will teach you how to negotiate, do the proposal, right? But the end-to-end process of property sourcing in South Africa is very different, I have found, since 2016, which is when I started, to date. It's actually started formalizing over time. And what's more interesting, as of the 1st of February, the Property Practitioners Act has been solidified and out there. Yes, there are a couple of gaps. However, it's very clear what you need to do as a sourcing agent or anybody that's involved with property. That's going to be my next video. So watch out for my next video, right? But now back to property sourcing. What I have found over time is that I can learn the concepts from other countries, but the process is very South African based because property sourcing is in its infancy. It's in very early days. And when I say early days, I'm talking about less than 10 years. Because when I got back involved in property sourcing back then, very, very, very few people were actually doing property sourcing in 2016 that I was even able to tangibly get a hold of. There was a guy or two in the property investing network that I used to frequent back then, but still, you know when you listen to the conversation, well, this is what happened with me. I kind of was like, and what about this, and what about that? And it wasn't quite clear. But over time, since 2017, one or two people started coming up. But again, by the time I got to 2019, I started seeing property gurus advertising how simple it is to get involved in property with no money down. That's a pet peeve. That was a sarcastic tone. Just in case. Understand the concepts. Get to knowing that if you find property, running numbers, what do these things mean to you for where you are, right? Because when you get a hold of those concepts, you can string a lot of different things together and you can learn for free right here on YouTube from different people. But what tends to happen is, like, for example, when I was looking for investors in the SAPA network, I used to go to this South African Property Investors Network. That's what SAPIN stands for. I would pay my subscription for being a premier member. Why would I do something like that? I would want that opportunity to stand in front of 100 to 200 people, depending on where the actual networking event is, right? And I would want that 60 seconds of opportunity to say, are you a passive income investor? Are you looking for student accommodation or Airbnb? Would a return on investment of 15%, 18%, or whatever it is tickle your fancy? Then see me during the break at that purple door. I was so specific, right? Because in that time, I'm now standing at the purple door. Everybody saw me in the front. And if they fitted in any of these different categories that I shared, they were able to come to me. That's why I would pay a subscription. Why? Because then I'm thinking I'm in a space where there are property investors. Whether they're interested, they're just starting, they are a little bit more mature in their journey, it didn't really matter to me at that point because I didn't know what I didn't know. Right? So when they came closer, I was able to exchange business cards. I was able to make appointments to have coffee with them. I was able to exchange a non-disclosure agreement to say, you know what, I'm going to filter in deals to you, but understand that property sourcing is the way I earn an income, right? I was able to have that connection. So I would definitely pay a premium for that. I find people saying, oh, why should we pay? This is how people make money. And I'm like, to each his own. I know what my experience was. I don't know about you. Where are you finding property investors? Because the more I was able to interact with property investors, the more I realized there were quite a few people that were also in the infancy stage of actually finding property, of getting into property investing. So, in meeting people within these environments, I started realizing, like myself, many people are in the early stages of property investing. So, I needed to also recognize that some of them were learning like I was learning. Some of them were being coached like I was being coached, and we were able to go through this journey together. Sometimes I would ask the investor, how much are you wanting to invest? Which area are you wanting to invest, right? Because in my world, if I know where you want to invest, what you want to invest in, and how much you're wanting to spend, it took me into conversations that sometimes the investor themselves didn't actually think through. And I was able to think through with them at that time, if that makes any sense. And I found that I would pay a subscription for that. I would go in front of more than 100 people at least once a month. And then I would go on social media, whether to LinkedIn or whether to Facebook, to say, you know, that property investing network group that I'd gone to, I met X amount of investors and it was such a mind-boggling experience, or whatever it was. And I would talk about my experience. And that's when I started also now attracting people to me that wanted to do what I was doing. And the beauty of teaching what you're doing is that you are kept honest and humble through the process. Because what tends to happen is that if you are able to teach from your superpower of doing, the moment somebody asks you a question, it's like you don't even have to think much. Why? Because 9 out of 10 times I'd seen questions come to me that related straight through to my experience. And I was like, this is what the experience I had, or this is the experience somebody else told me about, or this is the experience that I'd learned from so and so. So I was able to lend to that. So my question to you today, in all my ramblings today, I'm just thinking, what are you doing to educate yourself? What are you doing with the education you're getting? Are you putting yourself out there? Are you talking on social media about the things that you are learning? Be careful not to say, I've got a deal, 20% return on investment, because there are going to be plenty of people out there that do not have half the education that you have, and they think you are trying to pawn off a scam. So really just be mindful about what you're learning. Be mindful about which countries you are learning it from. Be mindful of the fact that the terms that are utilized throughout the world versus in South Africa, and the maturity of the discipline of property sourcing, property wholesaling, is so much different. So if you are one of those people that say, you know what, I really am interested in understanding property sourcing, I first want to say to you, I did a 4-part series on how to get started in property. I'm going to put a property playlist up here. Go through that 4-part series. Listen to how you dig trenches. Listen to how you actually go about getting involved in property investment, and how sourcing, for example, because of this video, I'm talking about sourcing, how it fits in the grand scheme of life before you start jumping into something that you may not know. So my encouragement to you, once more, is get the education, separate some of the stuff that you learn online, okay? Be happy to run with concepts, but your process must be South African bound. So look out for the Property Practitioners Act and how it affects sourcing and those that are going to benefit in property. I look forward to seeing you next time.